Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly, she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." "How come?" The young woman is Jack's daughter. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. The faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomer she had been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. "A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news." 2 of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever, and the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the third day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. "Okay," he said, "one more riddle and you can go home." 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Amy went on holiday to the seaside and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, "I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, They celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A, and so on. Smarty pants. A super wealthy businessman, Mr. Carl Jenkins, has been taken and left locked up all alone in a dark room. His phone's almost run out of charge, so he can only write one message. He knows that someone might spy on his phone, so he decided to write a message with a code to a high school friend, John Smith, who runs a detective agency. He remembered that in high school, they would cipher messages to each other, so he used the same technique. The message was this. Can you guess what it means? Back in high school, they would shift one letter to the right each time they needed to write a secret code. To decipher it, you need to go one letter to the left. Their alphabet looks like this. The message is, "It was Eric." Having read the message, John knew immediately who his friend was talking about. Eric is the financial director of Carl's company. He had seen him once at a party a couple of years ago, so he knew what he looked like. John decided to investigate this case himself and help his friend out. He was sure there was something secret in Carl's mansion. Somehow he thought he knew that Eric would have the key to the mansion. The receptionist, Kelly, said he would always have lunch with different business partners at 2 p.m. sharp in his favorite cafe. When the detective drove up to the cafe, he saw Eric, the man with a beard, discussing business with someone. Either of them had a briefcase next to them, and the briefcases looked similar to each other. John was waiting for Eric and the second guy to leave the cafe. They went to the car, got in, and left both briefcases on the back seat. The detective followed them. They left the car in a parking lot, and luckily, they were careless enough to leave the car open. Which briefcase should the detective grab? The one that looks brand new. While they were walking to the car, the detective spotted a few scratches on the second man's briefcase. Both briefcases were locked with a cipher. Not to make the whole thing suspicious, the detective decided not to take it and cracked the code right in the car. Can you help him open the briefcase? The code is 000. The briefcase is brand new, and Eric probably didn't have time to set a code on it yet. Plus, Eric's the one who leaves the car open and unattended in a parking lot, so no wonder he uses a default code for his briefcase. Now that the detective has the key, he heads to the mansion. The front door isn't a problem with the key in hand. The study is upstairs. He's been there before, so he remembers the stairs leading up have a secret. If you step on the wrong stair, you'll instantly fall to the basement and won't be able to escape from it yourself. What step should John mind? It's the one with the slit in the middle. When you step on it, it opens and you get into a dark room with bats and spiders. Yikes! Alright, John is finally at the study door, and Carl would always use buttons to open it. You've got only one try. There are 3 buttons, yellow, green, and blue. Which one should the detective choose if he knows that Carl is a big fan of painting? A combination of blue and yellow gives green, so the door opens. Green light for our detective. He finally reaches the safe with top-secret documents that could help him find out the truth. Obviously, just like any other safe, it's locked with a code. It also has a warning. You can enter the code only once. If you hit the wrong code, the safe locks up forever. He's looking around for a hint, and voila! John is right. On the desk, he sees a note. It says, "Secret code," and has a combination of 3 digits, 3, something, and 1. The digit in the middle can't be seen since there's an ink stain right on it. Can you crack the code with one attempt only? The code is 371. The detective thought the code was used frequently, so the button must have been a bit worn out. He was right. Since he knew the beginning and the end, he only needed to find one more worn button. Alright, now he's got the top-secret documents he needed for his investigation. He looks through all the papers and finally finds something that looks like the document he actually needed. To take it as a hard proof, he needs to find one which is not fake. There are 4 copies. They look almost the same, but only one is real. Can you guess which one? It's the one in the upper left corner. It has a stamp, a signature, and it says agreement. The one next to it looks the same, but it has a spelling mistake. It says agreement. Other copies lack either a stamp or a signature. So the detective takes a closer look at this agreement and sees something about a painting bought at an auction. He suddenly understands that his friend Carl was taken so that someone could sneak into his mansion and grab that super expensive painting. He's looking at the wall with all the paintings Carl collected and realizes that no painting is missing. There are as many nails in the wall as there are paintings. Still, there's something strange about one of them. Can you spot what's wrong here? Even though all the paintings are present, there's one that lacks a frame. According to the agreement, the painting has been recently bought, and an art dealer helped Carl pick it. The expert was an honest man, and he helped Carl make sure all the other paintings in his collection were real. This time, the painting turned out to be nothing but a copy. Why did the expert suggest that Carl buy it? Although the painting cost nothing, its frame was a beautiful and expensive piece of art. The one who grabbed it definitely knew that. Now it's all clear. John has to find both Carl and the precious frame. He goes outside, trying to deduce where the person who took Carl went. Carl is looking at all the tracks on the ground. He needs to follow one of them to understand where to look for Carl. Where should he go? He's got to follow the tracks going to the left. There are 3 sets of tracks here. The first belonged to John's car. The second set belongs to a 2-wheel vehicle, and since the tracks are really thin, they were left by a bike. It seems impossible to take someone somewhere on a bike, so these must belong to a mail carrier who comes every day to bring the letters. The last set of tracks definitely belongs to a large car, so John should follow it. He's lucky and there are no turns, so he's just going straight. Half an hour later, he sees something like a castle. He drives up to it and he sees 3 moats in front of him. Here's the first one, a row full of metal stakes. How can John jump over it safely? There's a small hot air balloon nearby. John has to untie it and light the lamp to take off. Since the next moat is on fire, John thinks it's unsafe to fly over it because the air balloon doesn't fly high enough and the lamp doesn't have enough oil to go on for long. Still, he managed to cross the moat with fire easily. How did he do it? He took the sand from the air balloon's ballast and sprinkled it on the fire, extinguishing it. The last moat was filled with scalding hot lava. It took John some time to figure out how to cross it, but he managed to do it safely. How? There were a lot of stones around him. The lava torrent wasn't deep at all, so throwing stones at it, he made a tiny path to hop on. The castle was rather small inside, so the hardest thing was to actually get into it. When he entered the hall, John saw 3 doors. Above the doors, there was a sign. It said, "One of the doors leads to a labyrinth no one ever escaped. One of the doors is the exit. If you enter it, you'll have to cross all the 3 moats all over again. One of the doors has what you're looking for." When John looked at the doors, he knew immediately where his friend was. Which door did he choose? The handles were made of shiny metal, which looks cool but gathers all the fingerprints. The only door with fingerprints is the one on the left. John opens the door and sees his friend. Carl rushes out of that dark room, and while heading to the exit, they spot a few frames. Which one is Carl's? The rectangular one. The painting was rectangular, and the 2 other frames are square. The 2 friends get out of the castle, get in the car, and head to the police department. There, an officer's waiting for them. They have 3 suspects who could have possibly taken the exquisite frame. Carl and John enter the room separately. Still, they choose the same person. Who did they choose? The man on the right. Carl chooses him because it's the art expert. John chooses him because he saw him with Carl having lunch. Wow, seems like this expert's not going to work with Carl ever again.
They say seeing is believing, but is it really? Optical illusions have a mind-boggling way to trick our brains. They use a combination of color, light, or particular patterns that can make us see things that aren't there. Today, we're taking our brains for a test drive and seeing how these illusions work. Let's start easy. Behind all of these little black dots, there's an image. Are you part of the 1% of people that can see it? It's a minion. Congrats if you spotted that. Here's another one in this style. Can you see what's hidden here? It's a ninja turtle. Honestly, you did need to be a bit of a ninja to see that one. And what about this one? It's Homer Simpson. So now there's something hidden behind black stripes. How's your X-ray vision working? You got it if you said it's one of the dragons from How to Train Your Dragon. That's cute. We're moving on to phase 2, so this will get a little bit trickier, okay? Your task is to find the 4th object in each image. You have 7 seconds to spot all 4 items. 3, 2, 1, go! Did anyone find the straw by any chance? Anyways, could you spot the nail? What was hardest for you to find? The egg or the button? So now we're going to step up our game. This is medium level difficulty and you'll have 7 seconds to find all 4 items. Ready? Go! Did anyone find the French fries? I sure didn't. Up next, 4 women and a baby. Yikes, this is hard. Could anyone spot the hair comb? Here's another one for you. Where on earth was that banana hiding? Good luck with this next one. So the envelope is hiding behind the bathroom pipe. I love black and white. But I'm still searching for that white egg, if you ask me. If this were my room, my mom would be telling me to clean it up ASAP. It took me a while to find that little birdie, but the mission was successful. Good morning, y'all. Oh, bummer, I couldn't find the book, could you? What object can't you find here? I had trouble locating the brush. Too many details, too little time. I have to say, you do have a pretty good eye for detail, but we're changing the game now. You know what they say. You need to keep changing the stimulus to make your brain work better and better. So now, it's emoji time. You'll have 4 seconds in this round. Did you see that one of them didn't have laughing tears? Where's the really sad emoji? And here I was thinking that clowns were supposed to be happy. I guess we all have our bad days, huh? What about this one? Oh, it's the browless one, isn't it? Can you spot the odd one? Oh, so it's a dairy-free burger. There's one with a different grin on its face. That's the one. I think your eyes are pretty warmed up now. So we'll move on to some hard-level optical illusions, okay? This first one is called the impossible triangle. But wait, what makes it so impossible? You have 7 seconds to figure that out. The so-called Penrose triangle is also known as the impossible triangle because it could never exist in reality. This magical triangle defies the laws of Euclidean geometry. If you follow the ball sliding on the surface of the triangle from the top point, you'll notice something strange. It looks like the left side of the triangle is extending away from the viewer, while the right side is closer to you. The Penrose triangle is the type of geometrical figure that can only exist as an optical illusion because this is what it looks like if we dismember it. Not a triangle at all, huh? And this next illusion is called the Pac-Man Chaser. You'll see why. Stare at the central cross for 5 seconds. The image appears to be in motion, doesn't it? And you might also see a green disc appear in between the lilac spheres from time to time. Now, this image allows us to witness 2 illusions simultaneously. Firstly, although the image appears to be in continuous motion, nothing here is moving, we promise. This phenomenon is known as the phi phenomenon. It happens when stationary objects are placed side by side and illuminated rapidly one after another, creating an illusion of movement. Now look at the center of the image again. Can you see the green disk? This second illusion is called an afterimage, and this happens when your brain tries to substitute an item with something else as the original item disappears. But why is it green, you might ask? That's because green is lilac's complementary color. If we were to change the color of the disk to blue, then the color of the gap changes to yellow, which is blue's complementary color. Neat, right? Can you stare at this parrot's eye for 15 seconds? Just keep staring at it. I'll tell you when you can close your eyes. You're about to witness another example of an afterimage. 3, 2, 1, and close your eyes. Can you see a red parrot? Isn't it amazing that even though this parrot is black and white, you have the illusion of seeing the color red? Again, this is just your brain trying to guess the color of something. Don't these snakes move beautifully? Except that, they're actually stationary. This classic optical illusion is caused by repeating asymmetrical patterns together with specific color schemes. The illusion mixes lighter colors like yellow and white with darker shades of blue and black. This combination makes your retina send signals to your brain, claiming that these circles are moving. If you want to debunk this illusion and see things as they really are, you need to stare straight at one part of the image. This way, you'll see that the rotation will slowly come to a stop. Take a look at this image. It looks like the square in the middle is breathing, right? Like it's growing in size and then shrinking? What if I told you that it's just rotating, but not changing its size? Here's what's happening. This illusion is called motion binding. It happens when our brain tries to predict the movement of one of the elements in the image. Crazy stuff! This one's another example of a motion binding illusion. These 4 bars seem to be moving in parallel with each other, right? Wrong! They are all part of the same moving square. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. Our brain just gets confused. How many bars can you count here? This illusion has left the internet baffled. People have counted as many as 11 bars, but most people count between 8 and 7 bars. According to the creator of this image, there are only 6 complete bars. Try counting from top to bottom, and you'll notice that the upper bars are real. But by the time you get to the 6th bar, things start to get blurry and confusing. That's because the last 2 bars are incomplete. So when you try making them out, they appear to multiply and only leave you more confused. If you trace your pointer down the 7th and 8th bars, you'll be able to see that they are incomplete. They were only put there to confuse you. Can you tell if the dark blue lines are parallel to each other or inclined? They sure look crooked, but in reality they are not. This classic optical illusion was first described over 100 years ago, but it wasn't until the 1970s that it got its current name, the cafe wall illusion. A guy named Steve Simpson noticed a similar effect on the wall of a cafe in Bristol, and here we are. Now let's see how this works. First, let's blur the image a little bit. Oh, a little bit more. There you go. This way you'll be able to see that the dark blue lines are parallel to each other. If you look closely, the little black and white bricks at the intersection of wide lines are what makes this illusion possible. In addition to that, the curved elements inside the blue lines help to make the elusive effect even stronger. If you look at this image attentively, you'll notice a moving square that appears to be changing in tone. What shades do you see? Dark, then light, then dark again? Wrong. The square doesn't change at all. The creator of this illusion is Japanese psychologist and artist Akiyoshi Kitaoka. According to him, you can see your own brain changing its guess about the color of the square. Color is already an illusion created by our brains. It so happens that color is created inside our visual systems. What our eyes perceive as blue is actually a wavelength that is reflected as that color. Moving on, take a look at this staircase. It looks pretty simple, right? Well, now let's flip the image upside down. It still looks like a staircase, but instead of going from right to left, it looks like it's going from left to right. But don't blink. If you blink, the illusion will disappear, and you will be left with the original image. Whoa. This illusion is known as Schroeder's staircase, and it was invented by German scientist Heinrich Schroeder back in 1858. It's simple, yet it reveals a fundamental mechanism of how our brain works. If we dismember the staircase, you'll notice that the image is flat. What our brain perceives as a 3D image is just a combination of shadow and light. This means that the 3D itself is already an optical illusion. This happens because our brain captures images and tries to fit them into what it already knows. So it sees a shadow in a 2D image and understands depth. Basically, it creates an unreal perspective of the object in front of our eyes. In this case, we call it a three-dimensional perspective. Up next, look at this black square crisscrossed with perpendicular white lines. If you look attentively, you'll notice that the white dots, situated at the intersection of the grid, shift their color from white to gray and back. When you concentrate on a particular dot, you see that it's white, but as soon as your attention wanders, the dot turns gray. That's the Hermann grid illusion. Amazing, isn't it? We can take this illusion one step further by positioning white dots at the intersection of gray lines. All are placed on top of the black background. If you look at this image long enough, you'll notice black dots starting to pop up at the intersections of the grid, creating a scintillating effect. Another name for this illusion is a simultaneous light contrast illusion. As you perceive the dots as white at one moment, and then, almost immediately, you see them as black. So why do our senses let us down by making us see gray or black instead of white? This illusion demonstrates one of the most important principles of human perception. You don't always see things for what they are. The retinal cells in our eyes act as light receptors. When only one receptor gets illuminated, it perceives more light than when its colleagues are also illuminated. This prevents the firing of nearby receptors. With the Hermann grid illusion, the white lines are arranged in such a way that there's more light around the intersections than along the lines themselves. Thus, the dots at the intersections are more inhibited, and you see darker spots. What do you say? Did your eyes pass the test? I guess mine did, but my brain is a little bit tired. See you next time.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.
Mr. and Mrs. Luce have 7 daughters. Each daughter has one brother. Can you tell how many people there are in the family? The correct answer is 10. Mr. Luce, Mrs. Luce, 7 daughters, and 1 brother. Dr. Luce is a world-famous chemist.
Wow.
He has just arrived in London to attend an international science seminar. The next morning, the lab cleaner found Dr. Luce unconscious on the floor. One of the 6 lab assistants poisoned the chemist. The names of the 6 assistants are Austin, William, Oscar, Leo, DJ, and Robert. To solve this case, lab managers called the local detective, Mr. Smith. Dr. Luce left this mysterious note on the table. Here's what he wrote: 76, 20, 44, 79, 16, 22, 7. After reading the note, Mr. Smith asked the police to arrest 2 criminals. Who are the criminals? Oscar and Dustin. Remember that Dr. Luce is a chemist? He encrypted the names of his enemies using the periodic table hanging on the wall. Dr. Luce got better and returned to his work in the lab. He invited a young scientist, Oscar, for a job interview. His resume was too good to be true, so Dr. Luce decided to check Oscar's logical thinking. He offered Oscar to solve this number puzzle. Oscar cracked this task right away. What about you? Here's a little hint. You should read this puzzle from left to right and from top to bottom. Question 1. What are the next 2 rows of numbers? And question 2. Why? Here's the correct answer. Line 3 represents 2 1s. Line 4 then becomes 1 2 and 1 1. Line 5, therefore, is 1 1, 1 2, and 2 1s. Using the same logic, we can now decode line 6, 3 1s, 2 2s, and 1 1. Line 7 is 1 3, 1 1, 2 2s, and 2 1s. Dr. Luce hired Oscar and took him to the basement of the lab, but someone has changed the password on the door. Can you help the guys guess the code? This rebus is a hint. The correct password is summary. Dr. Luce offered one more riddle to his new employee.
How can a man go 8 days without sleep?
Can you help Oscar crack this one? The correct answer is easily, because people sleep at night. In the basement, Dr. Luce found out that someone had stolen his latest innovation, a superhero costume.
Oh no!
He had questioned 3 suspects. Jack, the cleaner, said,
I've been cleaning the floor in the hallway all morning. I haven't entered your office yet.
Peter, the lab assistant, said, I was working on my own project, and besides, I don't have a key to your private office. And Dr. Luce's wife, Helen, said, You never tell me anything about your work. How would I know what to steal? Dr. Luce took fingerprints from the closet where the costume was. But he found only his own fingerprints. Who stole the costume? It was Helen. She's the only one who's wearing gloves.
Oh.
After a short interrogation, Helen confessed that she had sold the costume to Dr. Luce's major enemy, Dr. Phillips. Dr. Luce went to his lab to take his invention back. A creepy guard stopped Dr. Luce at the entrance and asked for a password. Can you help Dr. Luce find out the code? See the sign on the wall? You should rearrange these letters to spell just a single word. So, the correct password is a single word. Dr. Luce entered the building and found himself in a strange place guarded by 2 people. One of the guards always says the truth, while the other one always lies. Dr. Luce doesn't know who is who. He can only ask one question to escape. What should he ask? If he asks the guard who always tells the truth, he would tell that the other guard would point to the dangerous door. And if he asks the guard who always lies, he would tell the opposite door of the truth-telling guard and point to the dangerous door. In either case, both guards will point to the dangerous door, and then Dr. Luce should just choose the other door. Dr. Luce entered the room and saw this group of scientists. Can you spot anything weird in this picture? The scientists are holding 4 slices of pizza in their hands, but only 3 pieces are missing from the pizza box. Dr. Luce entered Dr. Phillips's office. The room was empty. Can you help him find anything suspicious? Someone is hiding in the ceiling vent. Suddenly, Dr. Luce saw Dr. Phillips flying around in the superhero costume. He grabbed Dr. Luce, took him to the top of a mountain, and left him there alone. Dr. Luce wandered around and found 3 tunnels. There's an angry, hungry lion in the first tunnel. There's a huge fire in the second tunnel. And the third tunnel leads through a dinosaur lair. Which way should Dr. Luce choose? The third one. Dinosaurs became extinct millions of years ago. Dr. Luce came to a village and asked the local farmer, Rick, for a glass of water. Rick told him that he'd been struggling to divide his entire land between his 2 sons. Both of the sons have been very good to him, and now Rick's only wish is to treat his sons fairly and divide his land equally between them. But the problem is that the land has a weird shape, and thus there's no way to split it into 2 equal halves. Dr. Luce said,
I have an idea. It can guarantee that the land will be divided in a manner that will satisfy both sons.
Can you guess what's on his mind? All Rick needs to do is ask one of his sons to divide the land into 2 parts and tell him that the other son will have the choice of selecting one of those 2 halves. In this manner, both of them will avoid any tricks and divide the land equally. Dr. Luce was sitting at the local restaurant. He was sad because he'd lost his wallet during his adventures. He noticed a man next to him pulling a wad of $100 notes out of his pocket. Dr. Luce turned to the rich guy and said,
Hey, I have an amazing talent. I know almost every song that has ever existed.
The rich guy laughed. Dr. Luce then said,
I'm willing to bet you all the money you have in your wallet that I can sing a genuine song with a lady's name of your choice in it.
The rich man laughed again and said, Okay, how about my wife's name? Helga Fiona Mary Rose Holmes. This evening, the rich man went home poor, and Dr. Luce went home rich. What song did he sing? The Happy Birthday Song. The villagers told Dr. Luce mystical legends about the local forest. He liked creepy stories and decided to go there and see it for himself. He set off at night and soon got to the forest. He noticed a small shop nearby. The seller said, Hey bro, don't go to this forest unequipped. Take this magic potion. It will make any creepy monster fall asleep for 10 hours. Dr. Luce took one bottle and continued the journey. He wandered there for several hours, but he didn't see anything mysterious. Dr. Luce was about to leave right before dawn. Someone appeared in front of him. A pair of vampires that feed on humans and a siren who hunts people using her singing. So there are 3 enemies, but Dr. Luce has only one potion. What should he do? The sun will rise in a few seconds and vampires will run away. That's why he should pour the potion at the siren. Dr. Luce found an abandoned castle. As soon as he entered, someone locked the door. Dr. Luce found 3 ways out, but all of them were dangerous. The first path was full of hungry wolves. It was impossible to get through. The second passage was guarded by 5 vacuum cleaner robots that were reprogrammed to hunt down humans. And the third passage was filled with molten lava. What door should he choose? The second one. The vacuum cleaners might go after him, but they're pretty harmless. Finally, Dr. Luce returned to his hometown. He's also a college teacher. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough time to prepare for the upcoming class. Therefore, he offered the students this tricky lesson. There was no homework, assignments, or tests, but there was a final test that would have only one question on it. When everyone received the test, it was a blank sheet of paper with a question on it. What is risk? Most students managed to give their answers, but only one student deserved the highest grade.
Yes!
That's weird because he only wrote down one word. What did he write? His reply was this. Dr. Luce went on a business trip to Vienna. He felt very nervous because he was about to meet a lady he used to date in college, Jane. She's also a scientist who's currently working on immortality pills. That's why she asked Dr. Luce to come over and help her. As soon as he entered her office, he knew that something had gone wrong. 3 zombies were standing in the room. Can you tell which one is his ex-girlfriend? Take a look at Dr. Luce's hand. He has a tattoo, T plus J. So his girlfriend is the second zombie because she has a tag on her foot that says Jane.